The HD-2D style is a beautiful way to revive JRPGs from the past using pixel art accompanied by more modern visual effects such as dynamic lighting and gorgeous environments. Square Enix wants to let up on this style, but I say no, we need more JRPGs in this style. Let's talk about 10 JRPGs that deserve to be brought back into the limelight with an HD 2D remake. With Octopath Traveler, Square Enix introduced the world to this gorgeous HD 2D art style. Since then, we've seen several games remade in the style: Triangle Strategy, Live Alive, Star Ocean 2R, and most recently Dragon Quest III's Remake. Each one of these JRPGs just oozes style, and while recently finishing up Dragon Quest III, it got me to thinking, what games from the past deserve a remake in this style? Well, that's what I'm here to talk about today. However, before we get started, let's go over what exactly HD-2D is. HD-2D is a style that combines the pixel art style of classic games with more modern graphical effects, such as depth of field, dynamic lighting and shadows, as well as high definition backgrounds, which gives a very beautiful retro visual style with a modern feel. With that being said though, let's jump right into today's video, so pop your corn, ice your drink, and let's get into talking about 10 JRPGs that deserve an HD 2D remake. The Heaven and Earth trilogy, but more specifically Terranigma, released in 1995 for the Super Nintendo. The Heaven and Earth, or Quintet trilogy, consisting of Soul Blazer, Illusion of Gaia, and Terranigma, are easily up there as some of the best action RPGs that the Super Nintendo has to offer. And yes, before you rip my head off, I do rank it higher than both Secret and Trials of Mana. However, if I had to pick one game from the series to be remade in the HD 2D style, I would pick Terranigma. The entire trilogy is absolutely fantastic, but Terranigma is on a whole other level. Terranigma is an action RPG that is somewhat similar to Zelda titles, featuring a top-down perspective with the main weapon being a sword. This, like the previously released HD 2D remake of Live Alive, never ended up getting a localization in North America, as Enix's North American branch was closed down by its European release in 1996. As a result, Terranigma was only released in Japan and Europe, making it one of the few JRPGs that was released in Europe and not North America. For this reason alone, I feel it deserves a remake in the HD 2D style. Even released on the Super Nintendo, Terranigma has a very gorgeous art style, and that art style would transfer fantastically to the HD style. If we could get the Heaven and Earth trilogy in the style, I would be a happy camper. Those Super Nintendo action RPGs just hit different, and Terranigma is one of the best. Final Fantasy V, released for the Super Nintendo in 1992. Everyone talks about Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI, but Final Fantasy V always gets thrown under the bus when it comes to talking about the best Super Nintendo JRPGs, featuring an absolutely fantastic job system and a story that takes place not over one, not over two, but three separate worlds. Final Fantasy V deserves more love than it gets. Yeah, I know we already got a pixel remaster, but I say it deserves a full-on HD 2D remake. Now keep in mind, while I say Final Fantasy V deserves this remake, I am by no means saying that Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI don't deserve it as well. Those are just as deserving as Final Fantasy V, but for me personally, I find Final Fantasy V to be one of the best JRPGs on the Super Nintendo. Of course, this could just be because I'm a huge fan of job systems, especially when that job system lets you mix and match abilities to give totally broken skill combinations. What can I say? I enjoy playing God when it comes to JRPGs. I also really love the characters as well as the music. Seriously, I never get tired of the battle on the Big Bridge. It's up there as one of my top 10 battle themes of all time. Of course, with Battle on the Big Bridge comes with Gilgamesh, another one of my favorite villains, anti-villains, lapdogs. He's a hard character to categorize, okay? If this did get a remake, I say they go above and beyond and reintroduce the dungeons and jobs that were added in the Game Boy Advance port of the game, since they were absent in the Pixel remaster. While you're at it, throw in a few new job classes too. It's a remake. Gotta do something to make it worth your while, right? I just want another reason to enjoy Bart's and Boko's adventures all over again. Lufia 2, Rise of the Sinistrals, released in 1995 for the Super Nintendo. I can't believe I didn't play Lufia 2 until 2024 because it's honestly gone down as one of my favorite games of all time. So, faithful remakes are great, and Lufia 2 is a wonderful game. You could just pretty it up with HD-2D and call it a day, but honestly, if you're gonna do a remake, don't stop at the bare minimum. First of all, since Lufia 1 and Lufia 2 follow the same timeline, combine these games. Make one huge Lufia game with the two games. Additionally, we need justice for Tia. Tia got the short end of the stick despite being best girl. I'm not saying she deserves to be 100% in the spotlight, but perhaps write her into the story so she isn't 100% forgotten outside of a scene or two. Lufia 2 is already such a beautiful game, and I would love an expansion on the lore of the game, fix some of those absolute messes of glitches that the game is infamous for, and maybe throw in some new super bosses. I swear, I mean this for gameplay, and not just so I have another excuse to listen to the beautiful Sinistral battle theme. Okay, it's to listen to that theme again, but can you blame me? It's amazing. Even if we can't get an HD-2D remake of Lufia 2, if you haven't played it yet at this point, you really should. Seriously, it's up there as one of the best JRPGs of all time. Though I think at this point we deserve a remake of Lufia 2, especially after that disgusting, horrible, pathetic embarrassment of a remake that we got on the DS, Lufia Curse of the Sinistrals. Seriously, that game is an absolute nightmare, and an HD-2D remake could replace those horrible, horrible memories. Ugh. Breath of Fire 3, released for the original PlayStation in 1997. Yeah, believe it or not, the PlayStation got pixel-based games, and I feel this is a prime contender for games that deserve HD-2D remakes. Breath of Fire 3 is my personal favorite Breath of Fire game, and another game that's in my top 10 JRPGs of all time list. I'm still upset that Breath of Fire just kinda died once Dragon Quarter came out. I didn't really grow up with the series, but back in about 2010, when I went back to play a bunch of games that I missed out on, this was one of the series I played, and I really adored everything the series had to offer. Honestly, with Breath of Fire 3, well, it was pixel-based as far as sprites go, the environments were still 3D. I'm sure this could be changed in a way to make it work in an HD-2D style, maybe somewhat like how they did it in Star Ocean 2 Remake. That game looked gorgeous, and just imagining Breath of Fire 3 looking like that is super exciting to me. Breath of Fire 3 really was an improvement on Breath of Fire 2, including things like a fishing minigame that I spent far too many hours getting addicted to. Seriously, I think I spent more time on that fishing minigame than I did the actual story of Breath of Fire 3. Catching the whale is the real final boss. But actually, the other huge addition was the Master System, which I feel is one of the best character progression systems in any JRPG to this date. Each Master having different prerequisites to gain access really varied the gameplay. Of course, I wouldn't say no to any Breath of Fire being done in the HD-2D style. They're all fantastic games. Yes, even that one, you know what I'm talking about. Valkyrie Profile, released in 1999 for the original PlayStation. Valkyrie Profile is one of those games I instantly fell in love with a story inspired by Norse mythology, side-scrolling dungeons full of platforming, and one of the most fun battle systems that I have ever experienced. Honestly, Valkyrie Profile doesn't look terrible graphically, but since it's already a gorgeous 2D game with beautiful pixel art, an HD 2D remake could make it even better. Though for a remake, I wouldn't want it to be solely a one-to-one remake. First of all, the endings. The B and C endings are generally pretty easy to get, but the A ending involves doing a ridiculous amount of seemingly impossible to know things, like sending certain characters up at the right time, reduce a hidden value below a specific point, and worst of all, you can completely ruin getting the ending by visiting certain areas before you're supposed to, or by not visiting other areas not required by the story. I'm just asking to make this true ending a bit more obvious to get. Other than maybe make the platforming feel a bit more streamlined, there are several points in Valkyrie Profile where it feels like you are exploiting bugs just to properly get past platforming sections. Other than that though, all I'd want is an HD 2D graphical upgrade. Valkyrie Profile is one of my favorite games of all time, and I'd be absolutely amazed if we were able to get a remake of it to introduce it to a new generation. Yes, I'm aware that it has a port on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 of the PSP version, and while that is a great way to play it, that port is not the best. Namely because it's based on the Japanese PS1 port, which is fine I suppose, but it aggravates me that there's no item sorting. Just my thoughts, but yes, even if this doesn't get an HD-2D remake, please play Valkyrie Profile. It's like $10 on the PlayStation Network. It's an experience like no other. So, where did you get into the Tales series? For me, that was Tales of Eternia, released as Tales of Destiny 2 in North America on the original PlayStation in 2000. Tales of Eternia was where the series really came into its own. I play Tales of Eternia at least once per year, and it is absolutely a game that deserves to be brought back to the eyes of modern gamers. Namco Bandai actually recently announced a remaster project starting with Tales of Graces F, which is totally a game you should pick up when it comes out in January. However, for the earlier Tales games, remasters aren't all that likely. At least that's what I think, mostly because remastering pixel-based games can prove to be a bit more difficult than simply upscaling polygons. So I say go with a full-on HD-2D remake. I've actually been thinking this since the Star Ocean 2 HD-2D remake. Why stop at Tales of Eternia? Tales of Fantasia, Destiny Remake, Destiny 2, and Rebirth could all use this style as well. Back to Eternia though, personally, while a lot of this could be nostalgia, I feel like Tales of Eternia has one of the more enjoyable casts in the series and is one of the sweeter games when it comes to story. Even if a large amount of the game focuses on racism as a plot point, and that Keel is one of the most unlikable characters that has ever graced a JRPG, I can't even think of anything that I'd want added to Tales of Eternia. It's another one of those games that I think is just perfect the way it is. Make the game pretty, give it a remastered soundtrack, and bam! I will give you collector's edition levels of money, Namco. Come on, make it happen. Waiting. Oh, and speaking of Tales, I am actually reviewing through the whole series, so if that's something that interests you, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Mother 3, released exclusively in Japan in 2006 for the Game Boy Advance. There are 1,000,001 reasons why this game deserves an HD-2D remake. I could go over each and every single one of them, but most of all, it's because Mother 3 never received an official localization in the West. Sure, there are fan translations, so it's playable in that sense, but considering this is commonly mentioned as the best game in the trilogy, another chance to get it localized would just be wonderful. Mother 3 and all of its hype are well deserved. It has some fantastic characters, the music is phenomenal, and the battle system puts a wonderful twist on the turn-based JRPG. I don't think I've ever seen a rhythm turn-based JRPG done quite like Mother 3. Pressing the A button in tune with the music to do extra hits was genius. It's a shame that we didn't get the chance to see this game in the West. However, the main reason I feel we deserve to see Mother 3 in the West, which, while it may sound incredibly sadistic, is Mother 3 is probably one of the most depressing games I have ever experienced. I mean like Mortal Kombat levels of ripping your heart out of your chest while screaming fatality kind of depression.
Come on, you have to do better than that.
Flawless victory. Fatality.
I've heard rumors that the reason why it hasn't seen a localization is due to the music copyrights, but I'm sure a remaster of the music can somehow get around that. I really just want to see it officially localized. I'm still upset that Japan's Nintendo Switch Online service got a port of this, and the West still hasn't had a chance to officially play it. Maybe one day, but until then, I'll hold on to hope that we get to see Mother 3 with an HD 2D remake. Golden Sun and Golden Sun The Lost Age, released in 2001 and 2002 for the Game Boy Advance. Of all the games on this list, I feel the Golden Sun games are one of the most deserving. Firstly, because they just don't look that great these days. The pixel art of Golden Sun is a mess, and unless you're playing it on a Game Boy Advance, it just isn't fun to play with the graphics getting in the way. Keep in mind that this is just the world map, dungeon, and town sprites. In battle, the game looks absolutely gorgeous. Those enemy and character sprites are peak. Don't even get me started on the battle theme in the first Golden Sun. It's definitely up there as one of my favorite tunes that Sakuraba has ever composed. With that being said, this is why I feel an HD 2D remake of Golden Sun is needed at this point. The game is fantastic. I love the pseudo job system it has, the hunting out little summon spirits, and just all of the story of the game. With that being said, I haven't finished Golden Sun or The Lost Age at this point. I think I've played about 70% of Golden Sun, but I honestly loved what I played of the game. Hopefully, one day we can see a re-release of this game in the HD-2D style because it's easily up there as one of the best JRPGs that the Game Boy Advance has to offer. And to this day, it hasn't been freed from the Game Boy Advance, unless you count the Nintendo Switch Online Game Boy Advance service. And let's be honest, that in itself is a crime. Not to mention there are some mechanics that could be fixed, such as the cumbersome menus, and the lack of battle auto-retargeting. Fix those things, give it the HD-2D art styles, dynamic lighting, and I'd go ahead and say you have a dang good remake. Fire Emblem 7, also known as Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade, or just plain old Fire Emblem, released for the Game Boy Advance in 2003. Fire Emblem 7 was one of the first experiences I had with playing strategy RPGs. I remember trying to play it secretly in high school on an emulator. It's a miracle I actually made it through high school, honestly. I spent so much time playing Fire Emblem 7. Whenever I think of strategy RPGs, this is one of the first games that comes to mind. The art style of Fire Emblem 7 was already really beautiful, but if we could somehow get an anime art style converted to an HD 2D style, I feel like it would look gorgeous. I guess Star Ocean 2 already did it in that style. Yeah, I know, I've mentioned Star Ocean 2's remake several times already in this video, but honestly, it's just that good. As for Fire Emblem 7, it's probably up there as my favorite Fire Emblem, partially due to nostalgia, but I also didn't care for the direction that Fire Emblem went in with its release of Awakening. Despite the fact that Awakening saved Fire Emblem from dying, no, I'm not saying Awakening was bad, it just wasn't done in my style. With all that being said, I should probably play Three Houses or Engage, since apparently those games are fantastic. What do you think? Should I give Three Houses or Engage a try? Are they as amazing as everyone says? Please, let me know. Alright, oh boy, here's the Ys tax for today's video. Ys 5 Kefin Kingdom of Sand, released for the Super Nintendo in 1995. Okay, I'll be honest, I say a lot of positive things about Ys, but Ys 5 was terrible. I love the Ys series, but Ys 5 is just so mediocre. It honestly just doesn't feel like it's even an Ys game. It's just so bland in every aspect. With this being said, this is why I believe that Ys 5 could absolutely use a remake. And why not take advantage of modern engines and remake it in the HD 2D style? Let's get into how I personally would fix Ys 5 if it was up to me. First of all, the combat. Make it flow better. As it stands, Ys 5 has the clunkiest and slowest combat in the series. Yes, even clunkier and slower than the bump system introduced in Ys 1 and 2. Secondly, make magic actually useful. Magic in Ys 5 has absolutely no use. It doesn't do anything, and on top of that, you can't even use it during boss battles. It's such a useless mechanic. Seems like a waste of resources to have it in the game in the first place. Honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to having it removed entirely in a remake. Then the plot. Please expand it. Seriously, the plot of Ys 5 is super lackluster and super short. You could have easily expanded the alchemy and homunculi plotlines and made them actually interesting. While I don't expect a huge amount from the story of Ys, I actually expect something Falcom should be proud of. The plot of Ys 5 is an embarrassment. And lastly, the music. I don't care. Scrap that entire Ys 5 soundtrack and build a new one from scratch. When I play Ys, the music is one of the top things I look forward to. Every title has a banger soundtrack, but when it comes to Ys 5, it was just bland and uninspired. It didn't feel the same. Honestly, if you asked me to name any track that stood out, I couldn't do it. Fix these issues, remake Ys 5 from the ground up, and you could have a fantastic and a beautiful remake. Not to mention, Ys 5 is actually the only Ys game that doesn't have a modern day remake. So there we have it, 10 JRPGs that could use a remake done in the HD 2D style. These games, while not necessarily bad, are incredibly difficult to play in the modern age, be it due to accessibility issues of being on old consoles, old mechanic, or maybe the pixel style just didn't age all that well. Did I miss any games that you feel deserve an HD 2D remake? If so, let me know which ones in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to let me know by hitting that like button, subscribing to the channel, and dinging that notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos. And hey, if you want more Shinky JRPGs, be sure to check out this video as I'm sure it'll be something you enjoy. Especially if you enjoyed your time here today. This has been Shinky, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, have a wonderful day.